Shout out to G-Man Boxing. Where's the piss bottle? It's over there.
Alright people, Wednesday evening, so we'll do a little midweek review. As many know, a lot of news kind of tends to break kind of from Monday to Wednesday, and normally by the very end of the week, that's kind of been put on the back burner. So I like to get it kind of, done in around midweek. So some of the stories that are going now at the minute, the two main ones that I'm seeing here, or the two ones that I've seen that kind of, perked my interest that I didn't do a video on, well, one I did technically actually do a video on, is the Canelo Alvarez Jamal Charlo fight. Now this is an interesting one. There's even a quote here from Eddie Hearn in a recent IFL interview where he says he does not think Canelo Alvarez will face Ilunga Makabu in his next fight in May. Hearn explained that he'll likely present his offer to Canelo and Eddie Reynoso this week as well as others. So that means essentially, I get from that as well as others, it means that it's kind of an opened kind of field for promoters. So Eddie Hearn could go and probably, I would imagine with Hearn it would be Dimitri Bivol. I'll offer you a Dimitri Bivol fight, I would imagine, or possibly no, he's already fought Council, but you know what I mean, he'd probably offer him that fight, because at light heavyweight that's really all Hearn has, and it's super middleweight. At super middleweight, I mean, obviously I'm trying to think, there's Canelo's undisputed at super middleweight, and there's no real tangible offers that Eddie Hearn could make at that weight, as well as others. You would imagine the others would be Al Heyman, obviously he has Dave Benavidez, he has Charlo, Bob Arum has Joe Smith at 175 pounds. When did he say his next fight? Next week, or this week I should say. I was going to say Bob Arum might wait until the Joe Smith fight is done, but we'll wait and see how that goes there. So the Ilunga Makabu fight doesn't like it's happening in May. The more I think about that, the more I think that potentially the reason why the Ilunga Makabu fight might not happen at all is not because Canelo doesn't want to go up in weight. It's not because maybe he feels it's a risk. You're dealing with Don King when you're dealing with Ilunga Makabu. And Don King, like, I find it bizarre when fighters to this day sign with Don King for several different reasons. Obviously, Don King, his promotion is kind of pretty much gone now at this stage. He's reduced to doing one show every year, sometimes every couple of years, because prior to last year, his previous show was 2015. And I'm talking about Don King own production shows, not like, cross promotion where maybe he has a fighter or two on a PBC, you know what I mean? No, his own shows that he puts on. He's put on in the last 5-6 years 3. Well, 2 if you count the one that's coming up at the end of this month, so 3 in total if this one goes ahead. And I wonder if Canelo was thinking, or wonder if Canelo maybe had dealings with Don King about potentially this fight, and he thought, you know what, maybe he's putting something, you know what I mean, maybe he's looking at Don King and thinking, I'm not dealing with this guy. And Don King would be someone like even now at this stage, you would imagine Don King would be looking at Canelo and thinking, oh, how am I going to take money off you? That's the kind of guy you're dealing with Don King. In terms of the Charlo fight, that to me, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense from a financial point of view, from a business point of view. Obviously not in terms of a title point of view, because Charlo has done pay-per-views, obviously with his brother, but nevertheless he's done pay-per-views. Caleb Plant and Canelo done very good numbers. I think they've done over 1 million buys on pay-per-view, if not 1 million, close to 1 million. Done very good numbers. That's primarily driven by Canelo, it has to be said. Caleb Plant's not a big name in the States. Certainly not that I know of. He's certainly not a pay-per-view headliner or anything like that on his own. Certainly on a standalone. The Charlo, although, to be fair, they've done it together. I mean, I think when Charlo fought Korobov, you're supposed to correct me, was that on pay-per-view? I'm not sure. But I know Eubank was on the undercard. No, actually, Eubank fought Korobov that night, actually. Who did Charlo fight? I've forgotten now. God, I might have forgotten now. But I know Charlo was on that card. I'm not sure if that was a pay-per-view or not. Someone want to correct me on that. But I know for certain his fight against Derevchenko was. So he has pay-per-viewed in the past. Has Jamal Charlo. So even with his brother, I think that doubleheader they did back in 2018 where Jamel lost to Tony Harrison the first time, I think that was pay-per-view as well. So they have, like I said, they have done that in the past. They have done it together, but they've also done standalone. I'm pretty sure he was on his own. Jamal was for the Derevchenko fight. So he's known in the States, it has to be said, it is. So for him and Canelo, from a business point of view, from a financial point of view, to me that does kind of make sense. It would do good numbers on pay-per-view, be with PBC, probably on Showtime or Fox, one or the other. Canelo Alvarez seemed to be very complimentary of Al Heyman, seemed to, have good things to say about him with regards working with him, so I'm sure he'd be open to do it again. Maybe he misses the pay-per-view model, because potentially maybe that gives him a greater income. I don't know. With the Zone, as I said, it's not pay-per-view as of yet. It's all subscription-based. So they're paying him, X amount of money. He's guaranteed a specific purse. Pay-per-view revenue, which is very expensive in the States, it has to be said, it can get to, £70, $80 in around that. It's quite dear. And obviously with Canelo, it might even be, I don't think it's more than that, but it's in around that ballpark. It's quite dear pay-per-views in America. So maybe Canelo feels like there's more to gain from fighting the Charlo financially than, going to light heavyweight. And maybe he also feels Charlo is an easier touch, because Charlo at 160, he's not looked as devastating as he did at 154. That's fair to say. 154, Charlo was a beast. His uppercuts were knocking guys out of their boots. He was just a much better fighter. Much more eye-pleasing fighter, we'll say, at 154. At 160, the punching power isn't quite what it was. I do think he's struggling to kind of find, to pace 12 rounds. And you think about it, this is going to be 168. It's not going to get any easier. Certainly for me, anyway, going to 168. Certainly against Canelo for your first fight. So I would make Canelo very heavy favourite in that fight. I really would. Eddie Hearn has also stated, this was on the Zone Boxing, that he's finalising Conor Benn's next fight for April. Here in the O2 could be a possible venue for that fight, so you never know, I might try and get over to that. He said that the names... Now, here's the thing, right? There's one name that I really hope does not happen. And there's one fight here, there's one name here which I really hope does happen, because I think this fight could be quite good. Robert Guerrero. I mean, really. The fact he's even being discussed as an opponent for Conor Benn. What the... So, you're telling me, right, Conor Benn is going to world level. He's going to be fighting, the top 10, top 15 guys. Adrian Granados. Oh, yeah, real top 15 guy. Chris Algieri. Sure, his last fight at 147 prior to that was against Errol Spence, where he got knocked out 6 years ago nearly now. And then we're talking about Robert Guerrero, he's been gone, he's been retired, he's came back. He recently, did he win against... I can't remember even who won that fight now, actually. But Robert Guerrero's best days were about... Well, they were probably longer than that. I was going to say 5-6 years ago. They're probably longer than that, actually, now. So the fact that he's being listed up as an opponent, really... And they'll try and sell it as another former world champion, and another, another stepping stone on the road to glory, all that BS that they've been doing. And I guess I don't... Look, here's the thing, right? The way they build Conor Benn fighting these guys, they build these guys as if they could win world titles now, that these are still world beaters. They're clearly not. Like, Algieri looked a shell of himself. Granados, this wasn't the Granados who even fought Adrian Broner a couple of years ago. So the fact that they're selling these guys as legitimate opponents, I've no issue if they're saying, right, look, Conor Benn is still in the learning phase. We want to build them up gradually, but without taking a massive risk. Fine. But don't build it as a world title fight. Don't build it as don't build it as a world level fight. Don't build it as that. Alright, and that's the way I'll never forget that interview I think he gave with Ade when it was on the undercard of Chantel Cameron, when she headlined at the O2. And it was just so matter of fact the way Eddie Hearn spoke. He's like, we're stepping them up. We're going for it. We want to put Conor Benn in there with a top 10, top 15 welterweight. Can't think of his name now, but Robert Guerrero was one of the names. Chris Algieri was one of the names, and was Victor Ortiz was one of the other. And I was listening to that, and I was like, "Are you taking the absolute? Do you think I'm a mug? And do you think people who are watching this are mugs and thinking that they're top 10, top 15?" So yeah, little rant there, but that's just, I don't like the way he does it. I don't like the way he's trying to sell it. If it is Robert Guerrero, I don't like the way they're trying to sell it as Conor Benn fighting the elite. It's clearly not, but there's a name here, and it's making me wonder, does Eddie Hearn watch my videos? Because this has been someone, I'm sure he probably doesn't, but there's a name here that I've been saying for Conor Benn for a while. Maurice Hooker. Now, if he did that, that is a step up. And that is a legit step up. I'll tell you why. Maurice Hooker, yes, he lost to Virgil Ortiz it was last year, I think. He lost to Virgil Ortiz. He has lost prior to that at 140 against Jose Ramirez. He lost to Jose Ramirez in a unification fight. Alright? And Jose Ramirez, arguably, after Josh Taylor, is second or third best in his division at 140 pounds. Still. It's really between him and Regis Prograis for who's second best. You can have it in whatever order you want. But he lost to one of the best, top three in his weight, in a world title unification fight at that. And then he went and fought Virgil Ortiz, right? He rocked Virgil Ortiz a bit in that fight. He was having, I don't want to say he was having success. He wasn't winning the fight, but he gave a very good account of himself. There was still plenty in the tank there for Maurice Hooker. And that was, a year ago against one of the, a world-class fighter, in my opinion, Virgil Ortiz Jr. is. Him and Boots Ennis, they're just fantastic fighters. Fantastic. They're at world level now, I believe. So, for him, for Eddie Hearn to be putting Maurice Hooker, maybe he's using Maurice Hooker's name, I don't know. But if this has truth to it and he does put Ben in with Maurice Hooker, that's a fight now. And that's a fight, right, where if Conor Benn lost, right, he could come back from. Because at the end of the day, he would have lost to someone. Because Maurice Hooker, I don't think he takes the best shot in the world. I don't think he's chinny, but I don't think he takes the best shot. The knockout he suffered against Ramirez, he was stopped standing, but it was the way it just went from 0 to 60, and he was really just almost knocked out of his boot standing from the left hook, and then the barrage of punches that finished it. It was a great performance, actually. That was one of the best performances by Jose Ramirez that I've seen, possibly in his whole career. That was probably a career best performance. He looked brilliant against Maurice Hooker. I don't think that helped as well, the fact that Hooker ran into Jose Ramirez probably because if you go back and watch that fight, it was on the zone actually. He really performed well in that fight. I mean, Maurice Hooker was never going to win that fight the way Jose Ramirez was on that night. But him against Conor Benn, that could be a very interesting fight. If Conor Benn wins that fight, that is a name. That's a legit name. Because Maurice Hooker is a top 15, top 10 welterweight, in my opinion. Would I put him in the top 10? But definitely top 15. You know, he is a good fighter, make no mistake about that. So him against Maurice Hooker, I would like to see that. I'd still like to see the Avanesian fight at the end of the day. At least we can gauge where he's at with European level. Maybe they feel taking an Avanesian fight, if he loses, it might not look as good. If he potentially loses to Maurice Hooker, at least they can say world level. You know, he's only lost in a unification, and he's only lost to Virgil Ortiz Jr., who was basically at world level now, who's obviously fighting Michael McKinson now at the end of March. So obviously another talking point over the last few days has been Tyson Fury and his message to Alexander Usyk. Wladimir Klitschko, who was, I believe, a friend of Alexander Usyk. I know Vitaly has worked. I think Vitaly originally promoted, because K2 was the Klitschko promotion. I think that was who. I think he still is with K2, Alexander Usyk. But Klitschko had his say on what Tyson Fury said about Alexander Usyk and the accusation. The accusation he made. Tyson Fury, you live in a glass house and someone needs to take away your stones. Wasn't long ago before our fight, you actually tested positive. Anyone can Google it. Keep it classy. Can you argue with any of that? No. Facts. Tyson Fury, as I said, it was very rich from him to throw in, and Usyk of all people, it's not like someone you'd even associate with performance enhancers. The fact that he did it like that, I probably understand it more, or probably wouldn't have even batted an eyelid to it if he'd done in that little treadmill scene where he was running, if he'd actually accused AJ of being on something, if he said, no matter what you take, you still can't be a little cruiserweight. I would have probably just looked at that and the guy he's trying to rile AJ up. But the fact he said it about Usyk, I was like, really? It's a bit. I just was kind of scratching my head. And yeah, Tyson Fury. Let's see. He responded to Wladimir Klitschko. I might have to I might have to change some of the words because I'm waiting for the image. It won't bring. Okay, here's the image here. I might have to change some of the words. Let's have a look. See. So he came back at Klitschko and he said basically, Pity that someone can't be you, as you couldn't, I'm assuming he means couldn't, even land a shot in 12 rounds. Boom. I think you can get away with that. And now Granda something, time, I think he means, I wonder if he means father time, has taken you away. Usyk and you together could never beat a man like me. Okay, I was really thinking I was going to have to insert a few things there to get around it, but that's quite mild by Fury standards. Some of the things he said to Klitschko over the years, that is very mild. And then he, of course, obviously taunts him about the loss and shown images of the fight. Yeah, again, it was just a strange one. Tyson Fury accusing Usyk, of all people, when he himself, is not as white as the driven snow with regards drug tests and, performance enhancing, failed drugs tests and stuff like that, the nandrolone thing. This is an interesting one. Filip Hrgović versus Tony Yoka. Now, it's looking like that's the fight the IBF are going to order next with regards the final eliminator. Now, obviously, we know the situation with Filip Hrgović. Originally, it was Luis Ortiz. They were ordering for him to face. Luis Ortiz said he had an injury. I think he said he had a hand or wrist injury, so he refused it. Parker went to next. There was a contrast. Some were saying it was an injury, and David Higgins was saying it was to do with, timing and stuff like that. They'd be waiting too long for a shot. So, again, because this happened again, obviously last year with the Michael Hunter issue, they had to go down the rankings again. I had to find someone. Now, Zhilei Zhang put his name out there, the Chinese heavyweight. I think he's called the Big Bang. He said he'd be willing to face Filip Hrgović. Didn't particularly like that fight, to be honest with you, because Zhilei Zhang has not looked amazing. I thought it would be a fairly routine fight for Hrgović, and I said they probably will announce it next. But they've said Tony Yoka instead. Now, obviously, Tony Yoka was set to fight this weekend against Martin Bakole. That's not happening. I don't know, will they reschedule that? Potentially, because Martin Bakole, I think, was originally signed to face Tony Yoka. His promoter, not his promoter, I should say, his trainer and manager, I think his manager, well, Billy Nelson, has been singing the praises of, Martin Bakole. So I wonder what Yoka's going to do. Obviously, him and Hrgović have fought in the amateurs. Yoka won 2 and Hrgović won 1. Now, Hrgović won 1 many, many years ago, prior to the Olympics. And Yoka, who beat Hrgović in the semi-finals at Rio 2016, that might be an interesting fight. Do I think Yoka will take it? Well, here's the thing, right? Last year when Yoka was fighting, there was all the talk about him wanting to go on and wanting to fight, top fighters, potentially fight for world titles in 2022. Here is a golden ticket. If you win this fight, if you accept this fight and you win it, you will therefore be mandated to fight the winner of AJ Usyk. I'm assuming they might, they might end up vacating some of the titles. AJ Usyk might fight Fury, or the Fury White winner if that fight happens, and some of them, there will be a world title shot there at some stage for you. So if you want to fight a better opponent than what you have been fighting, Filip Hrgović, in my opinion, would beat the guys that Tony Yoka has beaten, including that Peter Malis guy, who's I think Croatian as well. Filip Hrgović would beat them guys. There you go. You've got a bit of history from the amateurs. Will Tony Yoka take it? I don't know. I have my reservations about that. I reckon they might try. See, there was talk about them rescheduling the Takam fight potentially, but I'm hearing a lot of people say that those two are quite good mates, and that was maybe more. That was more kind of for publicity. It was never really going to happen. It was always going to be Bakole, who was the original opponent. Will he decide to fulfill his obligation and face Bakole instead and say, look, I have this fight lined up. I want to fight Bakole, and then maybe we'll talk. I don't know. Can they do that? Will the IBF grant them an exemption maybe? Would they say, okay, you fight Bakole, provided that you eventually face Hrgović next? I don't know. We'll wait and see with that. If Yoka does refuse it, 2 names, Zhilei Zhang and Murakasiev, would be the next available kind of in around that area of the IBF's rankings. So we could potentially look at them. Jesse Vargas and Liam Smith has been postponed from February 5th. Vargas obviously pinged for the Holocaust, so that fight's on the back foot. I think Eddie Hearn said it's going to be a couple of weeks before. Let's see, according to the New York Post, Terence Crawford has filed a lawsuit against Bob Arum in which he claims his former promoters Revolting racial bias prevented him from securing big fights, earning millions. It's reported that he's suing for damages expected to be up to 10 million. Wow. And Bob Arum's first response to Terence Crawford suing Top Rank and alleged racial bias. I haven't seen the lawsuit yet, but it's ridiculous. Quote from Terence Crawford here. I actually only seen this here. Wow. Terence Crawford's quote from Terence Crawford's lawsuit. Top Rank and a company with 0 black executives and only 2 or 3 black employees refuse to admit that it does not care about support or know how to promote black fighters. Wow. I had a feeling this could get frosty between the two of these. I really did, because even as far back as last year, Bob Arum was openly like, and this was the bizarre thing. It wasn't like Bob Arum was speaking ill about Terence Crawford whilst he was still promoting him. Whilst Terence Crawford was still under contract and paying Bob Arum to promote him, Bob Arum was complaining about Crawford and how much money he's lost over the years on Terence Crawford, which I thought was just... I was like, well, we know what Bob Arum is. We know he's a scumbag. Even at 90 years old, he's still a scumbag. We know that. But I thought that was really loving. He is giving you money. He is paying you for you to promote him. And you're talking about how much money you've lost on him and how much he's got. Really? Crazy. Absolutely crazy from Bob Arum. We'll watch that. We'll watch the space with Crawford and Bud and see what happens there. Bud Crawford still hasn't announced who he's going to be signing with regards to new promoters. I can pretty much bet it'll be Al Heyman. If he wants to get the Spence fight secured, you would imagine it will be Al Heyman. So we'll wait and see how that goes. George Kambosos insisted that his next fight will likely be in Australia in May. He said the likes of Devin Haney, Vasily Lomachenko and Gervonta Tank Davis, all possible opponents, but will only face them if they agree to travel, which Haney and Loma have done. Wow, so Haney and Loma are going to agree to... Well, they agreed to travel to Australia. Australia, as we've seen with Novak Djokovic, is not exactly the easiest country in the world to get into if you've not got the foghorn leghorn. So we'll wait and see. We'll watch the space. If they go there without any issues, we'll see. But I think the thing about Australia is I think it's mandatory that you have to quarantine regardless. So that might not be ideal. You pretty much have to set your whole camp up in there if that's the case, which it will come. That'll be an issue if you're planning on maybe coming there with a couple of weeks left and you're having to stop camp to quarantine. So we'll watch the space there. But Kambosos, will it be Haney next? Potentially. Or will they just look to do a big homecoming against, maybe a top 10 lightweight just as a voluntary and see? I'm surprised the WBO haven't made Lomachenko mandatory yet. I'm quite surprised at that now, I have to say. Because I would have assumed they would have done it after Richard Comey, because Loma and the WBO have been quite close over the years. He's with Bob Arum, very close to the WBO. Oh, this here, I swear to God, this is just cringe. Jesus. Has anyone seen what Myra's Brides got tattooed? I wonder, is this legit? Is this tattoo real or is it fake? You know the way you can get some tattoos that are fake? I wonder, is this real? He got a Jake Paul tattoo, Jake's Bad Karma, and called out Jake. Myra's Brides? Really? 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 Not Lawrence Okolie, not go up to heavyweight. Jake Paul, really? Look, the whole Jake Paul thing in boxing, I don't mind it that much, to be honest with you. Like, some people say, but they're not real boxing matches. They're not, yeah, but they're getting eyes on the sport at the end of the day. If he's fighting Tommy Fury, if he's fighting, what's the guy's name, Tyron Woodley, it is getting eyes on the sport. Maybe some of these casuals who are looking at, the Woodley fight, maybe they'll watch other fights in the future. They'll see that knockout and think, ooh, can other guys knock guys out like that? Maybe I'll have a look-see. That sort of way, kind of things like that. But when you have Myra's Brides, I seriously, if that tattoo is real, if he's legit got that, and because he's stuck with that for life now, if he's legit got that, I don't know. I was going to say something, but I don't want to upset any algorithms on here, but my days, really, Myra's breeders with a Jake Paul tattoo and then calling him out. My days. Lord. Fraser Clark set to make his pro debut on the undercard of Mir Khan Kell Brook. We're getting ever closer to that fight. Looking forward to that fight, actually. I still am to this day looking forward to that fight. So we'll wait and see. I don't know if Fraser Clark's style will translate well into the pros, though. I really don't. I think his style... he seems a cool guy, but I don't know about Fraser Clark as a pro. I don't. I'm a bit kind of with him as a pro. Lastly, it's being reported anyway that the Luis Ortiz Charles Martin pay-per-view only done 25,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, if that is true, because we're hearing from sources, and I'll see if I can get any more kind of detailed ones here, but if it is really 25,000 pay-per-view buys, I'll just double check. I saw Luis versus Charles Martin, and let's see the pay-per-view buys. Pay-per-view buys. Yeah, it's looking here like 25,000. Wow. 25,000 pay-per-view buys. If that is legit, considering how cheap the actual event was in terms of the cost, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it was in around the $29.99, $30 basically in the States, which by US pay-per-view standards is quite cheap. If it's still only doing 20 or 25,000 buys, that's pretty poor, because that was in Florida. And that stadium did not look full. If Mighty Max Boxing is watching, because I know he's subscribed and watched a couple of my videos, he was at that event, and shout out to him. He's got a great YouTube channel, by the way, Mighty Max Boxing. Shout out to him every time. He was at that event, and even on TV, it did not look full in there. It didn't look like it was at full capacity or anything like that. So I do wonder how much of a hit did they take on that show, if any. I'd imagine, well, how much would they have paid them for it? Would they have really gone all out with the purses? Could they maybe have recouped some? But I don't know. I was baffled that they were doing that fight on pay-per-view. I would have thought that would have done good numbers on Standard Fox. I really would have thought it would have. That's pretty much it for the midweek review. I think I've been going long enough. There's been a lot of good stuff happening in the last few days, hasn't there? There's been a lot of good kind of news stories breaking, and coming near the end of this one. I mean, I know Joe Smith is fighting this weekend. It's not next week, it's the week after. We have the Watch the Space, a Lungan McCalbu versus the Beast Machuni rematch. We'll see what happens there, if that goes ahead. But yes, good. At least boxing's kind of coming back now a bit. So come February, we should be good to go with a lot more events that are happening. So for now, lads and lassies, I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, if you could, please, lads and lassies, smash the like button. It does help your boy out. For now, I'll talk to you. Peace.